This episode of the Managing Madrid podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. Cheers to the new year from our friends at Manscaped, because your resolutions shouldn't be the only things that are well kept. 2024 is the time for new heights, new opportunities, and a new look for your Times Square balls. Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is every man's cheat code to look good, feel good, and turn the page on confidence this year. Whether you're looking to maintain a trim or go for that clean-shaven look, this trimmer has you covered. Trusted by over 10 million men worldwide, now is your time to get a grip on your grooming with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use code ManagingMadrid for 20% off and free shipping. That's manscaped.com and use code ManagingMadrid for 20% off and free shipping. Happy New Year and happy new balls. All right, coming up, we have a snippet from this week's mailbag. Right off the bat, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who tuned in to the first post-game show of 2024. That was an eventful 1-0 win over Mallorca. I say eventful, even though it was only 1-0, but there were a lot of talking points. Mehdi and I broke it down for our members. Some people still complain, hey, you guys are not active after every game. How come you guys don't put out a post-game show for every game? We do. We've never missed a post-game show ever. So if you're trying to figure out where they all are, the best place to make sure you don't miss anything is go to patreon.com/managingmadrid. You get midweek post-game shows, you get live Zoom calls, you get mailbags, big picture podcasts, and more. It's a ton of fun. So make sure you're a member. Most of our content is only for members. The free ones are only released once or twice a week. So this is actually taken from this week's mailbag, and it's about Real Madrid's mentality. How do we actually measure it? I know we can measure all kinds of things, a lot of analytics, advanced analytics these days, but what about mentality, heart rate, all that stuff? Why is Real Madrid so successful at the death? Can we measure it? We talk about that. We talk about the center back situation. We talk about rotations and also Brahim Diaz. Now that Vinny's back, how does that affect him? How should that affect him? And a ton more. So this is just a brief clip. The full episode is much longer. We talk about Girona's title run and whether they can sustain it. We talk about Marcelo versus Roberto Carlos. We talk about Hugo Sanchez. Is he actually the second best pure goal scorer in Real Madrid history? Our answer is in the full episode. So again, if you want access to that and much more, go to patreon.com/managingmadrid. Alternatively, if you can't access Patreon in your country for whatever reason and you're listening to this on YouTube, just hit the memberships tab on YouTube and it'll take you to the same place basically. So thank you guys for listening and enjoy. Kunal Tilakar says, hey, I think that a very underrated virtue of almost any league-winning side is the ability to grind out results when they are not playing too well or are unable to find a way to break through the game. Converting those L's into D's and those D's into W's through what we call game management. It's when you aren't doing anything spectacular, but basically managing the game better to etch out a result, almost using your stature and experience to do so. All the grotesques do it? Is there? I don't know. In the 2000s, I remember being perpetually frustrated by Barca's ability to pick up such results too. What do you think of this ability? It's a thing in every sport, in my opinion. Also, can we sometime do an article or something in which this ability is looked at a little more statistically and compared with other great teams of their eras? I think it'll be an awesome read.
I think it's kind of intangible, so it's tough to kind of quantify or put down to statistics this thing we're talking about. It's true that some teams have it and some teams don't. And remember that year Real Madrid won the double with Zidane when Ramos was saving and scored like 3 or 4 goals late in the game of corner kicks. When was that? 17, 18 maybe? It was a crazy run.
17, I think it was.
Yeah, Real Madrid wasn't playing that well many times, really, but Ramos was pretty much scoring in the last minute, a header each and every time, and maybe even Casemiro and these players. So it's true that it's a trait that you either have or don't, but it's hard to quantify, in my opinion. So I think Real Madrid are as you mentioned early on with your colleague or your friend anecdote in terms of Real Madrid's comebacks, I think that Real Madrid are doing quite well in that department this year. That they've been able to find some wins here and there where maybe they probably didn't deserve it or were not expected to get the 3 points there, but at the end they found a way. Late Bellingham goals, maybe even lucky Bellingham goals like the one in San Mamés against Athletic. So last night a corner kick late in the game with Rudiger. I think Real Madrid are doing well in that department this season.
I think the way to measure it, the only way to measure right now, I mean, in the future, maybe they can measure heart rate in high pressure moments to see what everyone. I mean, like I think they do that in the military. I can't remember where I read it, but in the military they actually measure the heart rate of pilots in different situations, and
nice.
They can kind of tell who feels the pressure and who doesn't in certain situations. So I think to do that in football would be a different system you would need to come up with. I don't know how you would measure it. I mean, we all have the tech. I don't know how they would necessarily do it or when they would do it, but that's one way maybe in the future they could do it. For now, we measure it through clutch goals. How many goals came after the 85th minute, for example? Who's scoring them?
Winning goals, yeah.
Winning goals. I mean, that's the best
winning goals.
In the NBA, because there's so many more points scored, I think clutch stats come in handy. Like you can see how every player does in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, right? But for now, I think it's just how many games have Real Madrid won in the 85th minute and beyond. That's the best way to measure it.
I would stretch it to the 75th, maybe. Okay. Like I would qualify last night as a clutch goal, if you will.
Yeah.
It was the 78th, maybe.
Last night was definitely clutch, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I do believe it's a real thing, though, Kunal, for sure. It's 100% a real thing. Ranta says, can we really be expected to compete for La Liga and Champions League with only 2 center backs in the squad? I dread a situation when we are facing Manchester City with Carvajal and Tchouaméni as our CB pairing, which is pretty likely since Rudiger is playing every game and Nacho is taking red cards as soon as he gets the chance to play this season.
I wouldn't go as far as saying that's a very likely scenario, missing your 2 center backs in a very specific game. But it's true that at least one of them have been forced to play in a big game for Real Madrid. It's a true possibility, and it's kind of likely to happen. I don't agree with Real Madrid's stance in this topic. I think they're once again saving money here instead of doing what's best for the team. And I don't agree with it. I don't agree with Rudiger and Nacho being the only 2 center backs available for Ancelotti for the next 6 months, because I just also don't see Militao coming back, or even if he comes back and is able to kind of train and maybe play some games, there's just no way Militao is able to make an impact or start in a potential Champions League semifinals or a Champions League final, right? So again, Nacho has been discouraging this season. That's one thing. And the other is that if either one of them is needed to miss some time because of a small injury or because of suspension, the next in line is just not a center back. And that's discouraging for me to see that Real Madrid are kind of reluctant to address this issue that they have.
I think Nacho's been fine. I mean, apart from a couple of wild red card challenges.
Which were wild and like baffling.
Costly.
Ahead of El Clásico.
Yeah.
They were baffling enough for me to like raise my eyebrows and say, hey, man, can you be trusted? Really? We need you. Because he knows Real Madrid needed him. In both of those yellow cards, because Rudiger was in risk and in danger of missing El Clásico, I think, and the other night Alaba had gone down already, so he knew Real Madrid needed him, and he still got a very like reckless and ridiculous yellow card. Two red cards as well, and it's like, you have to wonder, like, hey man, we're going to need you. Can we trust you really? So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. We were all baffled about both of those. I mean, and the shocking thing is, after the first red card, he was very apologetic and he knew what he did was wrong, but then he did it again later. And he didn't really seem to learn from losing his head that first time. I guess my point, and it's kind of a weird one because, as I wrote a few days ago, he's been fine outside of two shocking red cards. But anyways, the more important point is, and I expressed this to Mehdi last night in the post game show. How the hell are you gonna give rest to Rudiger?
You just can't.
You can't rest him anymore. Like, so how?
Well, you can if you host. I don't know. Obviously, you can rest him in the Copa del Rey this weekend, and maybe next week. I don't know if you host whoever, Elche or whatever, or Granada at the Bernabeu. If you host these kinds of teams, I guess you can get away with playing Nacho and maybe Tchouaméni as a center back to give Rudiger some rest. But yeah, in terms of when it gets real and when Real Madrid face a true opponent and a challenge, he won't be able to rest, definitely. And not only he won't be able to rest, but he will be tired. That's the main issue, yeah.
Yeah, it's a terrifying scenario. Unless Tchouaméni turns into like the Camavinga left back of center back.
Guess what? He won't. Remember Lunin coming out of the box last night to kind of clear a dangerous pass behind the back line early in the first half? That was a reasonable but a mistake by Tchouaméni. Like, he got lost in that on that run by the attacker. So
I thought that was Rudiger in that situation, wasn't it?
Both of them, I guess. But
because I think it was Larin peeling off of Rudiger on that sequence. I could be wrong, but anyways, even if he was phenomenal, you're taking away your defensive midfielder now,
right?
And then that means you got to put Camavinga there. It's like, just all these things have dominoes.
And Carvajal doesn't have what it takes to play there on a consistent basis, man. He's just too short. And obviously, Lucas Vázquez at the right back spot has been atrocious so far this season. So you have both sides of this whole prospect being terrible, right? You have Carvajal quite possibly being bad as a center back because of the physical requirements to play that spot. And also the fact that Lucas Vázquez will be needed as a right back. So the fourth choice, if you will, would be quite terrible in my opinion. So yeah, it's just surprising to see that a team with as many resources as Real Madrid don't address this obvious big need, even in the loan market, man. It's just crazy to me.
When Ancelotti name dropped Carvajal as one of the emergency center backs, my jaw was like agape.
Mendy is a better option.
Mendy, I mean, there's also a lot of revisionist history with Carvajal's center back performance against Chelsea in the Champions League. Remember?
Yeah. I know. 20 minutes. Yeah, fine.
It actually wasn't good. It was total chaos, and he
put his heart on the field, but yeah, it wasn't exactly.
It was that we all loved him because he did what he could. It wasn't his fault, right?
Exactly.
It was just not good though, and it is. I mean, look, if it was me, I would that report a couple days ago of Mario Gila. Great, better than no one, man.
Exactly.
Just somebody.
Gila makes a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense, that report, in my opinion. Yeah, he's not playing much in Lazio either. He's not like Lazio will be that reluctant to let him go, I don't think. And cheap option. Club man, yeah, made total sense to me, and I could see Real Madrid pursuing that option. And even if he was not going to be better than Nacho, makes more sense than Tchouaméni already. So yeah,
I can understand why they don't want to get a bigger signing center back right now, but you need somebody.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I'm not talking about pursuing Araujo. I'm just saying that just sign somebody so that Tchouaméni isn't required to play that spot that often.
I don't. I wouldn't be surprised if the club do a proper preparation in signing a center back in the summertime, just to pre-plan for this a little bit better. I mean,
yeah, the Alaba thing looks terrible.
Yeah.
It's not the ligament is not the only damage he suffered, unfortunately. So a player his age, it just doesn't look good. The prospect of him ever being a reliable starter for a club like Real Madrid is just, it just doesn't look very good right now.
KG85 says, "Hey, Kiyan and Lucas, a little bit controversial question. Seeing our limited options for defense and the lack of depth, would you rather put all our focus on La Liga and secure winning that rather than putting effort in all fronts? I just have strong feelings that we can't compete in 3 competitions with 2 center backs. I would focus on winning the competition where we have the biggest chance."
I was going to say that I would punt on the Copa del Rey. It's a bit too extreme, but I would not play the starters in the Copa del Rey. Not a single one of them. And obviously, I would not proactively lose, but just see how far they can get. Just play Arda Güler, Brahim, Joselu, each and every one of them. Lucas Vázquez, Fran Garcia, obviously. Rotate and play some academy players here and there. Don't play a single starter of the or player on the first unit in the Copa del Rey until maybe you reach the semifinals and see how far they can get. And if you lose, fine. Champions League, obviously, you cannot do that. You just cannot, because of the history and the reputation of this club. You just cannot do that in the Champions League to focus in La Liga. You just have to play it through and put your best effort in both competitions. But the Copa del Rey, no chance. And I would be playing a single starter or a single member of the first unit in the Copa del Rey until the semifinals or so, and just see how far they can get.
Yeah, I have been asking for that exact same thing you just asked for the last
for years,
2 decades.
Yeah,
and that's never happened. Like Del Bosque, I remember did it a couple of times. He would field his like B and C team in those early Copa del Rey games, but then, Mourinho, Ancelotti, Zidane would kind of rotate a little bit, but it just hasn't. Like that's not going to happen. Although, like it's not going to be quite the starters though. Ancelotti did say that Rudiger will be paired with one of the Castilla center backs, I think.
Mm-hmm. Bellingham is going to start though.
Yeah,
get ready for that. Bellingham is going to start.
Champions League, I don't even know what that means to punt on the Champions League. That's not even.
Yeah, that's not conceivable. Yeah,
that's like asking if can the Earth stop rotating around the sun for one day? We need to focus on. I don't know.
Look,
it's not a possible thing.
I wanted to make a point in this episode, and I don't feel like there's a question about this. But since we kind of have the opportunity to maybe talk about Brahim here, I feel like the Brahim-Bellingham partnership has been a very good thing for Real Madrid since Vinicius got injured. And I don't want to see Ancelotti or Real Madrid going away from that much anytime soon. I think this is something they need to keep exploring. So I'm hoping to keep seeing more Brahim over the next few weeks, even though Vinicius is now back, obviously. But I think during last night's game, the team missed some of this Brahim and Bellingham connection that I'm talking about. So maybe something to keep an eye on. And of course, I realize and I acknowledge the fact that you just cannot, and this is what you were going to say before I interrupted you. You just cannot bench Rodrigo and Vinicius, and I'm fully aware of it. But this is a connection Real Madrid should try to keep exploring, I think.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, unless you bench,
midfielder and play Bellingham as a midfielder, but you just cannot do that. Yeah.
Your take is not an unpopular take. I've seen it quite a bit,
and
I think Brahim's been awesome. I also do think that once Vinicius hits his stride and gets into rhythm, I think it's a no. I mean, he has to start. He's the better player, and We just know his ceiling is just something different. And it's not the worst case to have Brahim change things off the bench like he did last night. I mean, he was a nice spark plug.
Don't you think, though, and this is by no means me wanting to start that Brahim should be ahead of either Rodrigo or Vinicius in the starting lineup. This is not me doing this. But don't you feel like, and this is only a one-game sample size, don't you feel again that both Rodrigo and Bellingham have been playing better with Brahim than what they did last night?
Both Rodrigo and Bellingham playing better with Brahim alongside them.
Yeah, so being better. Yeah,
yeah. I think it also. I mean, I wrote about this yesterday. It's on the website. Brahim also provides you with better defensive structure because he tracks like a maniac and he presses like a maniac, and he'll drop when Jude goes forward. He has a good understanding with Jude. There's more central playmaking.
Rodrigo's way more comfortable too.
But again, I think the overall ceiling is just higher with Vinicius. And what I do think Brahim has done is that, so Miran brought up this question in the Discord when I put out a call for questions. I didn't take the question because I wasn't sure if he was half joking or serious, but he asked if Brahim should be ahead of Ceballos in the depth chart. And that was interesting.
For what spot, though?
Well, the interesting thing about that question, now that I think about it, is that you could play Brahim in a deeper role.
I think he's ahead of Ceballos in the depth chart.
But I think the question is more like if you need a central midfielder, Ceballos is obviously ahead, right?
Yeah.
But Brahim has proven that he can play in a deeper role, and I think. What I do know for sure now that I didn't know at the start of the season was that he's played so well, Brahim, that is, that there's little to no drop off when he comes in off the bench or the person he replaces because his energy is so amazing and because he's just such a positive vertical player and works so hard on defense that. And I'm a big Ceballos believer, by the way.
Granted, though, just an important point here. I think that whenever we've seen him off the bench, it's Real Madrid chasing a result, right? So we're kind of seeing this. We've only kind of seen this version of him, like the one so aggressive with the ball, Real Madrid chasing the result, the other team with a low block and all that. That it's kind of easier to make an impact that way rather than providing somewhat of an stabilizing presence like Ceballos can do, even though he hasn't been that great this season. But you know what I'm saying, bro, right? It's just that. Yeah, but he's kind of being put in a favorable context to kind of explore his game.
Yes, but I mean, like the thing with what Real Madrid has looked like in the past like 3 years, almost anyone who comes in off the bench seems to look good because the game state will suit that situation. You're playing against tired opponents and you have more space to work with. But I also think Brahim's profile is such that if you wanted to just control the game and play defense by holding the ball, he would work. I mean, that's why, for example, when Guti was playing for Real Madrid, the great thing about him was that he could come in any game state. You needed to control possession, he's perfect. You needed to find some ingenuity to break down low block, he's perfect. You needed someone to play behind the ball, he could do that too. Brahim is kind of in that mold in some sense. But I guess my point was initially that the great thing is that we know for sure now that we have a real player in the depth chart in Brahim. You can play in a variety of different positions and you can trust him. And I don't know if I was there necessarily at the start of the season with him. And I'm sure of it now.